والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Alhamdulillah, we are blessed and we are joining each other, our hearts and our minds, to celebrate the name of Lady Zaynab alayhi salam and her legacy. She is a figure, a champion, and many people, Muslim, non-Muslim, when they approach the life of Sayyid Zaynab alayhi salam, they are astonished at what she has accomplished and what she stood for. You have to imagine that going to Yazid, going to Sham, and in that state that she was in and the caravan of Imam Hussein's family was in, was not something easy. I mean, sometimes when we want to approach our bosses or something and we want to get a vacation time or our knees shake or something. But imagine approaching one of the most powerful people in the world. I mean, we talk about Yazid and we talk about, some of the foolishness he did, but you have to understand he was one of the most powerful people in the world at that time. He had a vast empire. And it was not him alone. There were even foreign delegates from other civilizations that had come there, besides his ambassadors, his army, and everything. And she is there, the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is there, and he disrespects Imam Hussein, and she gives a marvelous speech. A speech that not only Shia recorded, the Sunni recorded. There's a book called Balaghatun Nisa, about 200 years after the Prophet of Islam passed away, after Hijrah, 200 years, and has compiled the speeches of ladies. And her speech in Sham is recorded in this, not from Shia sources here. Even Allama Majlisi, I believe he uses Balaghatun Nisa. So look at the context to talk to someone that is a murderer at that time, a murderer and a tyrant, and in front of everyone, and how sometimes, we either get so angry and frustrated we can't even talk, or sometimes we're so scared as men even. But at that time in Arabia, 1,200 years ago, 1,400 years ago, a lady that was an asir, a captive, is actually an amir, is a commander. And I'm going to read from you tonight, from her speech, that this is not the speech of a captive. A captive does not speak like this, because Yazid can possibly send you for execution, to send you, because you're going against the caliph, especially what the Umayyads had brought about the caliph is as if you're going against God. You're going against the successor of God. So tonight we're going to be talking about Lady Zaynab alayhi salam. We're going to be talking about how she was born. She was born in the year of the 5th after Hijri. Some say 6th, Jamadi al-Awwal, the 5th day in Medina. Her name means what? What does Zaynab mean? Zaynab is Zayn means adornment of Ab, of her father. She is the adornment of her father. As if she was Imam Ali alayhi salam speaking in Kufa and Sham. The Holy Prophet of Islam, when she was born, this hadith, it says this. It says, I advise the present and the absent in my ummah to honor and respect this girl as she looks like Khadija. She looks like Khadija. She looked like the Prophet's wife. But did they honor her? Did the ummah honor her? Did they respect her? One of the scholars was saying that, yes, her as her grandma, the wife of the Holy Prophet of Islam. So when we talk about one of the scholars, he was saying that once I was reciting a majlis, and I was mentioning Abbas alayhi salam, and I mentioned how Abbas was killed for water. And his arms were separated and he was martyred. And he was Sunni, he wasn't Shia. he says that, when I heard that story of Abbas, I began to cry so much that when I went home, my eyes were red, and my wife was like, did you fight? What happened to you? And he says, the entire night I cried for Abbas. I said, how can the Muslims come together and kill somebody that wanted water? He was seeking water. And for me, this was something very heavy. So a lot of people, they don't know. They don't know what happened to Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They can't imagine that it was the granddaughter of Rasulullah that was in Sham and that was asir, that was a captive. How can this happen? And we're going to examine this speech. That same person, he says, I had a dream that he cried for Abbas. He was from our Sunni brothers. And he says that Imam Hussein in my dream comes 10 times in one night to me. And he asked the Shaykh, what does this mean? 10 times Imam Hussein in one night comes to visit me. And the Shaykh mentions a verse from the Quran that for those that you do good, you will get tenfold, 10 times. You went and visited Imam Hussein, his majlis once. Imam Hussein himself came 10 times for you. He mentioned it that way. And then he became later on a follower of Ahlul Bayt. Many people do not know what happened to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Many people do not know what happened to the family of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So tonight, inshallah, we're going to talk about her life. We're going to be talking about how one of the scholars, and I said this in Farsi, and I promised, it is that from Al-Nabi Mamaqani, one of our great ulama, how he explained to Lady Zaynab alayhi salam is. In one of his books of Rijal, he has Zaynabun أقول زينب وما زينب وما أدراك ما زينب. In Surah Al-Qadr, we have the same type of terminology, about Laylatul Qadr, وما أدراك ما Laylatul Qadr. Allama Mamaqani is saying that she has such a high position that you will not be able to understand. Someone like me, I shouldn't even mention her name. She has such a holy name, such a holy position, we cannot understand who she is. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا Zaynab. You think you know who Zaynab is, alayhi salam? We do not know who Zaynab is. Then he begins in Tanqihul Maqal, a book about Rijal and biography. He begins, he says, Hiya Aqila Bani Hashim. Aqila comes from aql, an intellect. And Aqila means this. It means that Lady Zaynab alayhi salam, as we have in hadith, is alima ghayra mu'allama, fahima ghayra mufahima. When we seek knowledge, you have to go and read books. You have to go either to a seminary to seek Islamic knowledge, or a sheikh or somebody to seek Islamic knowledge. But Lady Zaynab alayhi salam, she was alima ghayra mu'allama. This is for us a surprise. Why? Because when you think about it, she would have learned from Imam Ali, right? She would have learned from Imam Hassan, from Imam Hussein. She would have learned from her grandfather, Rasulullah. How is she alima ghayra mu'allama? Meaning that besides these other ways of seeking knowledge, of gaining knowledge, that she also has knowledge from angels, knowledge that is from unconventional means. Alima ghayra mu'allama. Psychologists, they say when a person, you want to raise a person or see how they're going to be raised, you look at 3 things. One is you look at their muhit, their environment. Environment brings somebody and shapes the form of a person, the environment. The other is their tarbiyah, the way that they were raised. Someone can be in a bad environment but raised by parents properly. The other is waratha, what they have inherited from their parents. Some characteristics we have, it's inherited. Just how sicknesses sometimes are inherited. Some of those good genes, alhamdulillah, you have and you're healthy, it's from your parents. And some types of attitude or khulq that you have or disposition that you have, it's inherited. So look at these 3 aspects. And look at Lady Zaynab alayhi salam. You see, for example, the aspect of her when it comes to her parents, Ali and Fatima alayhi salam, waratha. You look at the muhit, in the environment that Lady Zaynab alayhi salam had. What type of environment was it? It was a protected environment with Bani Hashim. We're going to mention this, that nobody saw Lady Zaynab alayhi salam, shakhsaha, it says, Allama Imam Ghani, ila yawm at-taf, until the day of Taf. And lastly, when it comes to tarbiyah, what else do you expect when Imam Ali is the father and Lady Fatima is the mother? So therefore, you see, with all these things and all these benefits and advantages she has, she is still alima ghayra mu'allama. She hasn't been taught, meaning she gets special knowledge. Her knowledge is not normal, even though she has the best parents in the world, she has the best environment in the world, and she has the best, inheriting the best disposition and characters from the world. She is still alima ghayra mu'allama. She still is special according to this hadith. So she's aqila. Aqila because she is one of the narrators of Fadak. She was 6 years old about when she loses her mother and remembers that speech and even teaches some of the other narrators and becomes a teacher of hadith, of khutbah fadakiyah, of what her mother said. 6 years old. Or you have other tafsir of the Quran in Kufa. She was a teacher of tafsir of Quran. I'm going to read for you from the khutbah, because sometimes, we say it's much easier, to say something. It's better to show it than to say. I'm going to show you the power of Lady Zaynab alayhi salam from her khutbah, from her speech. So first we have to continue with what Al-Nabi Imam Ghani says. وَقَدْ حَازَتْ مِنَ الصِّفَاتِ الْحَمِيدَ مَا لَمْ يَحْزُهَا بَعْدَ أُمِّهَا أَحَدٍ. She possesses Sifat al-Hamida that after her mother, nobody else had. Nobody was. And then it says, حَتَّى حَقٌّ أَن يُقَالْ هِيَ الصَّدِّيقَ الصُّغْرَى. She is the second Fatima. She is the small Fatima Zahra. So this is the background before we get into the sermon, why she could deliver such a great speech. وهي في الصبر والثبات والقوة الإيمان والتقوى وحيدة. And she is, when it came to patience and firmness and belief and iman and taqwa, she was wahida. Nobody was like her. Look at the worship of Lady Zaynab. Look at the night. Fatima, the daughter of Imam Hussein, mentions how Lady Zaynab was worshipping Allah that night continuously. How Imam Hussein, we have that, would ask her sister to let me do dua for me in your Salat al-Layl. This is the ibadah of Lady Zaynab. That her Salat al-Layl she would not forget Salat al-Layl, even if she couldn't stand at that time. And the calamities were so high and she would have to sit, she would still perform her Salat al-Layl, the worship of Lady Zaynab. وفي الفصاحة والبلاغة كأنها تفرغ عن لسان أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام كما لا يخفى على من أمعن النظر في خطبتها. And when it comes to speech, she is a part of Ali alayhi salam. Ali is the king of speech. Look at Nahj al-Balagha. Look at how Imam Ali alayhi salam expresses things. Those that are here on Friday prayers, we're going over taqwa, especially from the speech of Imam Ali alayhi salam, Nahj al-Balagha. You see how beautiful he speaks. Al-Nabi Imam Ghani says, as a part of Ali alayhi ولو قلنا باسمتها لم يكن لأحد أن ينكر إن كان عارفا بأحوالها في الطاف. And if someone were to say she's ma'asum, nobody can reject this. Question, do we have more than 14 infallibles or no? We have the official ma'asumin. We have those in Ayat al-Tatir, right? We have those that are in 33, 5. And the imams are incorporated later on because we believe that imamat needs infallibility. But there are those that some have lived life in a way, and even some of our scholars, you can even say, some say they testify that we doubt if this person is ma'asum or not. Because sinning is up to us. Someone cannot sin if they decide not to. So when it comes to ismat of others besides Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, besides the 14, yes, it's very possible in a way that Al-Nabi Imam Ghani says. He says here that if someone were to say this, nobody can reject. He didn't say it, directly. He says if someone were to say it, nobody would reject. إن كان عارفا بأحوالها في الطاف وما بعد كيف ولولا ذلك لما حمل الحسين عليه السلام مقدارا من الثقل الإمامة أيام مرض السجاد عليه السلام. How can this not be true when Imam Sajjad was sick and Lady Zaynab took care of some of the responsibilities of Imam Hussein alayhi salam? So he talks about the infallibility of Lady Zaynab alayhi salam. One of her speeches is in Kufa. One of her speeches is in Sham, at least. The speech she gives in Kufa, that when she begins to speak, the Kufans, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is coming, his holy head alayhi salam, and the Shuhada entered, Kufa. And at that time, the Kufans are crying. And even though they're the same people that wrote the letters, they're crying and they're saying this, silence. She commands silence from the people. Everyone, it says, the narrator, people became almost breathless just from saying silence. In here, maybe we would think in the understanding that we have that all types of worship, all types of crying for Imam Hussein is good. Here she's saying, don't cry for Imam Hussein. We always say crying for Imam Hussein is always good. Here, this type of crying is not good. It says here, now people of Kufa, people of deceit, and disloyalty, are you weeping? You're weeping, you're crying. Your tears may never stop flowing, people of Kufa, and your mourning may never end. She slams them, and she shows the Kufans, and for them to realize that, look what you have done. You wrote letters, and then you joined the army. So that is part of her first speech. But what I want to focus on tonight is examining in depth, inshallah, and explaining some of the sermon of Lady Zaynab alayhi salam in Sham. Yazid is there with officials, dignitaries, ambassadors of foreign governments, religious figures of faith. And then the prisoners of Imam Hussein, the family of Imam Hussein was brought in with that situation. I don't want to talk about it, but that's that situation that they entered the palace. As I said, one of the most powerful people in the world at that time. Yazid begins, he was presented the head of Imam Hussein on a silver plate and placed in front of his throne. This is the context. I want you to imagine, to go to Sham and to imagine how difficult such a situation would be. Overcome with apparent victory, Yazid starts poking the blessed head of Imam Hussein with a stick and expressing his joy by reciting this poetry of Abdullah ibn Ziba'iri. And he says this, while the head of Imam Hussein is there, while the captives are there. The Hashemites staged a drama for domination, for there was no divine news nor any revelation. What does this line mean? He says that the Hashemis, because Yazid is from the Umayyads, the Hashemis wanted domination. They made things up as if domination, for there was no divine news nor any revelation. This is kufr. This is blasphemy. Yazid is saying poetry that what happened in Medina or what happened in Mecca and Medina from the Prophet was all made up. Nothing happened. This wasn't a revelation. He is the Khalifa of the Muslimin. And he's saying it's all fake in poetry. It's all fake. So then, how do you think Lady Zaynab would respond to this? Right? It's the Khalif, he's supposed to be the successor of the Prophet, and he's saying there's no revelation. Wahi is all made up. She begins. And as we said, Lady Zaynab is alima ghayr mu'allama, teacher of Quran. She uses Quran to answer him. What verse of Quran can you use to answer Yazid right now? How well are we rehearsed with the Quran to answer Yazid right now with Quran when he says there's no revelation? She answers them this way. ثُمَّ كَانَ عَاقِبَةَ الَّذِينَ أَسَاءُوا السُّؤَالَ أن كذب بآيات الله وكانوا بها يستهزئون. Very beautifully, as if this verse was revealed for Yazid, as if in that way. Then the final state of those that do evil was that they denied the signs of God. Those that do evil, they keep sinning and sinning and sinning until they deny the signs of God. God doesn't exist. Rasul wasn't a prophet. The Imams were not Imams. We have hadith like this. When a person sins and goes into the wrong path in darkness, Allah starts to take away these beliefs from him. Because you need a qalb as-salim to have iman. You need inshirahul qalb. Your hearts need to be open. When it's closed with the darkness of sin, how can faith come into that heart? As we say, Islam is not just completely intellectual. It is also spiritual in the same way that your spirit has to be able to accept these realities. If you do evil to yourself over and over and over, after a while you see that, I start doubting, I have doubts. I doubt about Imam, and then at the end you say, God doesn't even exist, na'udhu billah. So she answered it in this way, that then the final state, this is what happens when those that do evil. They deny the signs of Allah and they used to ridicule them. He is making fun of the head of Imam Hussein. Very beautifully she answered, Ya Yazid, you are in this disbelief because of your actions. Brothers and sisters, this is a note for us that in the same way, in terms of theology, you're looking for strong arguments, especially when you talk to the youth. You're also looking at the lightness and heaviness of the spirit. The heavier the spirit is, the more sinful the spirit is, the more arguments and demonstrations are needed to be able to prove Islam for them. The lighter someone is in sin, the closer they are with their fitrah and their disposition, the less arguments they need. It's like a bridge. You see a bridge? A light bridge can take a light person, a flimsy bridge. And a light person can go and travel. But can it take, say, a 500-pound person? Or collapse. You need a heavier bridge. You need heavier arguments. The bridge is an example of taking someone from one place to the other. Our philosophical arguments, our theological arguments need to be stronger and heavier for a person that is in more corruption and is farther from God. But when a person knows God and tries to do everything that's possible, you explain something small about Islam to them, they're like, someone that makes sense, and there's ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. But someone that's used to drinking alcohol, abusing people, usury, these sins, it closes the heart. The angels will not go to that heart anymore. There's no more inshirahul qalb. Because that as Allah has in the Quran, that God does not guide the zalimeen. Hidayah means we should deserve it. You should act in a way that you deserve guidance. Because guidance is from Allah. Allah guides whoever He wants, but not arbitrarily, not randomly. I guide him, I don't guide him. Okay, he's guided, he's not guided. No. According to their actions, according to their intentions. If we want to preserve our faith, therefore, if we don't want to have a su'ul aqibah, you have to protect your actions, because your actions will affect your beliefs, your aqaid. And you feel this, the more actions you have, the better actions you have, the more conviction and yaqeen you'll reach. You see this in great actions you do, ziyaras you do, hajj you do, shahr Ramadan you do, coming and doing salat, these beautiful actions. After that, and when you do salat, for example, and you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's with yaqeen, it's with certain, it's with a different degree than when you're outside of salat. It's a different degree than when you're outside of Mecca, outside of Karbala, outside of the masjid or center. So they look at both things. Increase both with amal and good actions with your spirit, and also increase your intellectual arguments. Islam is an extreme logical religion, but it's also a spiritual religion. That's why many people, they come and research Islam, but at the end there's no inshirahul qalb. They weren't guided. So when Lady Zaynab alayhi salam says, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the universe, and blessings be upon my grandfather, she is making and letting people know that, look, those that are ambassadors of other religions, those that have come, have just martyred the grandson of the Holy Prophet. You are taking their family, the family of the Holy Prophet, as captives. It should come as a shock to you. Do you think, O Yazid, this is attributed to Lady Zaynab in her khutbah, translation, do you think, O Yazid, now that you have seized the vastness of the earth from us and constrained the horizons upon us, and there will be will be herded like prisoners, that God wishes humiliation for us and honor for you? Do you think that now, zahiran, and apparently I am in shackles, I am taken in the Ziyar al-Nahiya has kal-abid, they have taken the family of Imam Hussein as slaves. I might look like a servant, I might look like a captive, but does it mean that Allah wanted to dishonor me? Does it mean that you are honored? Does it mean that Allah wishes humiliation on me? She is teaching us here to learn lessons from the khutbah of Lady Zaynab and make it in our practical lives. So sometimes you see things in this world and it's completely, the reality of that thing is completely different. Lady Zaynab is a captive. It looks like humiliation, but it was absolute honor in the eyes of Allah at that time. Absolute honor. It's very hard to talk about this topic, but it reminded me of it. Some people, many people, everyone has problems, but some people, they face severe problems. Sometimes it's with their kids. Sometimes it's with sickness. And they don't know where to go, And Allah, inshallah, all those that are sick and all those that are in poverty, all those that are hungry, may Allah, help them. I cannot say I imagine, how they feel. I can't say I know how they feel. But sometimes you think that if that happens to you, you're in humiliation. When God gives you a test and everybody else is living a nice life, going on vacations and sending it on in social apps, and you're just stuck either with your problems, with your financial problems, health problems, problems with your family. But with this type of worldview that you learn, the Zaynabi worldview, it doesn't necessarily mean that if things zahiran or apparently look good, that in reality they are good. Because Yazid is, you would call him today a billionaire, you call him a powerful person. Na'udhu billah, maybe they're going to say he's successful in economy and business, he's innovative, he's na'udhu billah. They might say these things, right? From the eyes of just pure material and business and things like that. But in reality, he is one of those that is going to the hellfire. In reality, she's going to mention this beautiful verse that opens it up. وَلَا يَحْسِبَنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّمَا نُمْلِي لَهُمْ خَيْرٌ لِأَنفُسِهِمْ إِنَّمَا نُمْلِي لَهُمْ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِثْمًا وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. Let the faithless not suppose that the respite that we grant them is good for their souls. We give them respite only that they may increase in sin, and eventually there is a humiliating punishment from them. She is talking about, you can say, istidraj. Who knows what istidraj means? It means when God gives and allows a sinner to do more sin, He doesn't stop them. He lets them go full throttle ahead. Bismillah, go. Go, I'm not going to stop you anymore. Why? You don't deserve my rahmah. You are so evil, Yazid, you don't deserve to be stopped. Just keep going. That is one of the dangers we see sometimes when the dunya opens up for us, sometimes too much. See, brothers and sisters, think of it philosophically, think of it logically. We are meant to worship God. That's our goal in life. Worship Him and reach sa'adah. And that's our prosperity, is worshiping God. Now, if something distracts us and leads us to another path, it makes complete sense for Allah to grab us by our ear or to, give us a little spanking and to put us back on the path. It's worth it, isn't it? That's what being Rahman and Rahim would be, to guide us. Allah is guiding us. So if we're ever distracted, say for example, I know if I be tested with a lot of wealth, I won't pass it well. I'm doing very well in my business and I'm being led astray by that wealth. Allah takes it away from me. Pulls my ear a little bit and I go back to Sirat, because I didn't use the wealth how Allah wanted me to. I didn't grab the hand of others. I was corrupting myself. It was corruption. It was poison for me. Or sometimes it comes to other things in this world. For the believer, Allah doesn't want to allow them to be separated from God. Because we have in the hadith from Imam Hussein from the infallibles, what have you found if you didn't find God? What have you found? What have you lost? If you have God, you could say. What else? What have you lost? Nothing in this world. Because this life is a bridge for us. This life is temporary. So however much it's painful for us, and Allah gives us tests and tribulations, but to make sure we're awake, it is still worth it. That's why some of the hadiths say, if we knew how great bala was in this world, we wish we were cut with scissors. Right? So for some, that type of action is needed. For some, actually, there needs to be a lot of rizq, or else they will say, oh, God doesn't like me. So do not ever think that apparent life that we see, that you think success, you judge success just by material or physical things is true. And you can say she's pointing to this in this verse. One of our ulama by the name of Shaykh Nukhudaki, he would see people in the shrine of Imam Rida alayhi salam, the 8th Imam, and they had huge problems, especially those that went to Panjare Fulad. You see, they lock themselves. They tie themselves up there. Their situation is so devastating. They say, if Imam Rida, if my situation isn't solved, I'm just going to stay here forever. So we usually go by them by the wrong type of view, and say, oh, those poor people. Oh no, what problems did they have? Oh no, I feel bad for them. Their children are sick, they're in poverty. There might even be, the bigger problems, I don't want to mention it. But then Shaykh Nukhudaki went and would say, Khush bahalatu. How fortunate you are. With our vision, this, subhanAllah, we say, thank God I'm not like that, alhamdulillah, But Shaykh Nukhudaki and Arif would say, Khush bahalatun, good for you. Why? Because that thing that's happening to them, for that person that's a za'ir of Imam Rida, that has caused them to tie themselves up to the shrine of Imam Rida. And if that didn't happen, they wouldn't tie themselves up to the shrine of Imam Rida alayhi salam. Right? So that brings that sense of urgency for them. So this is khush bahalat. Because if it wasn't like that, then they might have lived, say, a very lavish, a millionaire, billionaire life, for example, and not have any problems, and then forgot Allah, forgot Imam Rida. But now they have connected in this dunya and have tied themselves with the shrine of Imam Rida. That's one aspect of it. It's like they say in one of the people, there's a story that they say that one of the Shahs of Iran was more known for violence. And he saw a person that I believe was blind. And he said that, for example, what are you doing here in the shrine? He said, I'm doing dua so that Imam Rida can cure me. And he said, you're not cured yet? He says, by the time I go back and do ziyarah and go and do ziyarah and come back, you better have been cured. He's going to kill him, for example. And then this poor person who was possibly blind, he said that, okay, Imam Rida, now it's serious. I was blind before, now they're going to kill me. Please, Imam Rida alayhi salam. And by the time they say this person went and came back and the king came, he was cured. And they asked why. He says, basically because these many years you went to the shrine of Imam Rida alayhi salam, but you weren't a real beggar until now. You weren't a sincere beggar until now. You didn't see that sense of urgency until right now. So when you look at the speech in this verse, the way that Lady Zaynab alayhi salam uses it, you see that Tawheedi worldview of Lady Zaynab is very different than the way we look at life. Unfortunately, we look at life as just material things. Even when we want to value people, it's about how much money they have, how successful they are in business. And these are good, I mean, in terms of if he worked for it and he had a good business plan, these aren't bad things. But look at how Yazid was, and look at, in terms of the dunya, he had power, he had a Khalifa, but in reality, he was being prepared to go to hell. Let's continue here. I'm going to make it a little shorter because we're running out of time. But I encourage you, my friends, to look at khutbah of Lady Zaynab alayhi salam in Nisham, in Balaghat al-Nisa. Now she exposes the background of Yazid. Arabs are very sensitive to their background. You see, when they call each other, it's Ibn this or Abu this, like it's for the father of this, son of this. They have a knowledge called, genealogy, ansab, that they know the ancestry of everyone. And in Arabia, they would memorize their genealogy, who they're from. Fulani, Ibn Fulani, Ibn Fulani, Ibn Fulani, Ibn Fulani, all the way back 10 generations, 20 generations, 30 generations. Sadat and Sayyids, yes, they preserve this because it's an honor to be connected to the Imam. They preserve it. And they had a system, the Sayyids had a system where there was one main Sayyid that would distribute the khums to the Sayyids and would verify someone that's Sayyid or not. They would know the ansab of Sadat and how, if someone was true or not, amongst the Sadat. But when it comes to normal people, Arabs, yes, they had ansab. So when you talk about the nasab of Yazid, and he's the ruler, talking in front of all his pupils and everybody, that is a very sensitive issue, and it's very offensive. So she talks to him, "Oh, the son of the freed slave, the son of the freed slave." Who is she talking about? Who can tell me? What does she mean? Oh, the son of the freed slave. Because Abu Sufyan was part of the Tulaqa. The Tulaqa were those that were freed. Their Islam wasn't Islam basically too much out of choice. It was as if, the way you would accept, you would have to accept Islam, because that day was the day of Marhama. After bothering the Holy Prophet, abusing him, expelling him, and the Prophet going to Medina and attacking him in Badr and Uhud and Khandaq, the Prophet of Islam, I believe is in the 9th year, or 8th or 9th year, towards the end of his life, he gets power and marches towards Mecca. And he gets Mecca without bloodshed, basically without any bloodshed. And those people that he takes, and especially Abu Sufyan, that caused them so much damage and so much harm. They killed Hamza, for example, his family members and himself. He did not seek revenge. He actually chose to free them, Tulaqa. They were freed. But they're always known in history as the Tulaqa, meaning their Islam was worth much less. Because you cannot equal someone that became a Muslim at Fath al-Makkah after being conquered than someone that was with the Prophet believing him, like Imam Ali from the beginning, or like Lady Khadija alayhi salam. Much different. So when you say you're the son of the freed slave, your grandfather Abu Sufyan was of the Tulaqa. Your Iman and the Prophet of Islam basically won over your grandfather and freed him. That's what it means. Then she attacks the grandmother of Yazid. And I said these are sensitive things. Today in some communities, you say your father, your mother, your grandfather, they get very upset. Those are the red lines in some communities. You do not talk about their parents. It's very offensive. But this is Lady Zaynab smashing Yazid. She smashed Yazid so bad that the son of Yazid didn't even want to be the caliph anymore. He didn't even want to become the khalifa at that time anymore. So you see that there is neither anything unusual about you, nor any surprise in your actions. I'm not surprised about you, Yazid, what you do. How powerful this is. How can there be any hope of consideration from a child of a person whose mouth spat the liver of the righteous ones? That your grandmother ate the liver of Hamza, Seyyed al-Shuhada, So why is there any surprise when that is your lineage, son of a freed slave, and basically descendant, or that you're a child of a person that spat the liver. So this is the way that Lady Zaynab, in different ways, because we're running out of time, that she, through verses of the Quran, through these explanations, and talking again at the end, وَلَا تَحْسِبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا, and mentioning that those that are killed in the path of Allah, they are بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ, they are alive, opening everyone's eyes to the reality that victory is with Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, in her last sentence in the sermon. So all praise is due to Allah, to God, who granted our ancestors the bliss and our present generation the honor of martyrdom. She's showing that honor comes from God, and we have been granted the honor of martyrdom. And we ask God to complete their reward and give them even more, and make us their worthy successors. He is indeed merciful and loving. Sometimes we see affliction. Sometimes it's hard for us to understand, why did Allah do this? But Lady Zaynab, with all this affliction, is saying Allah is merciful and loving because she understands. As we said, she's alima ghayr mu'allama. She understands the reality. This is a great test and lutf of Allah. It's a lutf, it's a grace from Him. Allah is sufficient for us. We might be, in chains, but we do not need you. Allah is sufficient for us, and He is the best supporter. So from this we understand that Lady Zaynab alayhi salam, and I recommend you to read the sermon and to understand how powerful she was, and how this can influence us, especially as Muslim youth, or for the youth, not me, I'm too old now, but the Muslim, I used to say us Muslim youth, now I don't say it anymore. But for the youth and those being raised in this country, that you see the power of Islam. You see that when you practice Islam properly and you become a true muwahhid or muwahhida, and you only believe that Allah is sufficient for you, that nobody can ever take you down. You become the most powerful of people. Why was she so powerful? Because of her tawheed. Why was she so powerful? Because she was not afraid to lose anything. She did not have any dunyawi or material attachments anymore. This is the result of Islam. To produce the likes of Lady Zaynab alayhi salam, that's a role model, not only for the sisters, but for the brothers and men. Nobody at that time, I believe, would be able to be so courageous to stand against a tyrant like Yazid in that situation, except someone that is a muwahhid or muwahhida, that truly only worshipped God and only wanted to please God. So this is the lesson that we gain, that Islam, if implemented correctly, with correct submission, will create the likes of Lady Zaynab and Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and you will be the most powerful of people, individually and collectively. And inshallah, you will follow those that will inherit the earth, inshallah, Imam Mahdi. So say salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal farajah. We ask Allah, we heard that one of the brothers that provided this food tonight and sponsored tonight, that one of his friends is in the hospital because of Lady Zaynab and these holy names that we mentioned tonight, to give him a speedy recovery, inshallah, and complete recovery, inshallah. Allah forgive the sins of our family members and ourselves, inshallah, of the mu'mineen and mu'minat, especially those that have passed away from us. The founder of this masjid, may Allah bless his soul, inshallah. And allow all of us to walk in the path of Lady Zaynab alayhi salam, and to be how Ayatollah Khoi, I believe, mentions Sharikatul Hussein, that she is the partner of Imam Hussein in spreading the message of Karbala. Inshallah, we can do the same thing and expedite the return of Imam Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, ali Muhammad wa ajal farajahum. Sorry for taking your time. If there's any questions, I am available.